Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Caviling. I'm Ernesto.
And I'm Merrick.
And on this episode, we have a lot of cool stuff to talk about.
So we're going to go back and revisit some of the stuff we talked on episode 1 about Apex. Because if you know us very well, we like to hate on the things that everybody likes, not the things that people like to hate on. After that, we're going to move on to some of the controversy between Apple and Spotify. And then finish up with everybody's favorite movie series, superheroes. Who doesn't like superheroes?
Right, yeah. So I think we'll talk a little bit about Batman versus Superman.
We have 2 special features. So Ernesto and I realized 2 things of our first 2 podcasts. Mm-hmm. First, we said a lot, and that one doesn't count. But we now have an counter. That one also doesn't count. That will follow us, and we're going to have a small competition to see who doesn't say the most. Least.
No. Does that one count?
No, that one also does not count.
All right.
They all count now. So, another special thing that we have is last week we had Chinese afterwards, a little celebratory takeout Chinese, which is fantastic. And fortune cookies are one of my favorite things about Chinese. I love fortune cookies. I don't know how they taste so delicious. I'm sure it involves sugar, but they have been getting worse. The little inscriptions, they used to be super vague, like, we see great fortunes in your future. Mm. The one I got last week was, actions speak louder than talks.
Wait, did you mean words?
No, I mean talks. That is exactly what it said, is actions speak louder than talks, which isn't Chinese, by the way. It was coined in Connecticut by a pastor, and then really made famous, well, not actions speak louder than talks, it's actions speak louder than words, by Abraham Lincoln. This was a sad attempt at a fortune cookie. It's not even a fortune, it's like a
Chinese
statement.
Food was probably invented in Connecticut too, so
the stuff that I ate was probably invented in Connecticut. It was probably not Chinese,
right?
Yeah, I like the fried chicken, way too much. So,
all right. So, Captain Marvel, we went and saw it together on Tuesday. Merrick had not seen a lot of the Marvel movies before that. He's seen some of them, like the early ones, like Iron Man, right?
I was going to say, I watched the first Iron Man. I watched the second Iron Man, got really disgusted with that, and didn't watch any of the other Iron Mans. I watched the first Avenger movie. Wasn't a real big fan, so I hadn't watched any other Avenger movies. And I watched Captain America and Captain America Civil War and The Winter Soldier.
Okay.
That's all really my marveling up until last week. Last week, I killed probably about 3/4 of my brain cells last week watching Marvel movies. Crap. Just so that I could talk more intelligently to you about Captain Marvel. Last week, Ernesto gave these ratings. Acting a 7, character development a 6, story a 6, uniqueness among Marvel movies a 9, special effects a 9, and overall a 9. I am here to let you know why that is wrong. All of these scores are too high. The acting is probably the closest. I would say maybe a 5. Like, it was pretty standard acting. It wasn't above average. It wasn't below average. I would have said it was just fine. I don't know that I can think of one person that just had a standout. Nick Fury was probably the best.
Yeah.
And he himself was above.
I think having watched it a second time, who are there's the Kree, and then who are the guys that can change?
The Skrulls.
The Skrulls.
Skrulls or Skrulls? I'm not really.
I think it's a Skrull, right? The Skrull, right?
The Skrull.
So that main Skrull guy, kind of like the leader Skrull, I thought was pretty good. Especially after Nikki and I realized that he was also on camera as himself. He was like the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Early on during the autopsy scene. So I think he did a pretty good job with that role, and I liked it better the second time that I watched it, for sure.
Ernesto actually likes everything better the second time he watches it. He still watches Transformers twice a year. So, character development. Ernesto gave a 6. I'm not sure which character he thought was getting developed.
Captain Marvel. That's
Captain Marvel. I was going to say, I give him some credit because this was probably the most unique way that Marvel has developed a character, where the character has a lot of background and you just don't know it. Most of the time, the Marvel sauce is to walk through everything.
Right, they usually have a movie that's dedicated to the origin story of that specific character.
And while this is an origin story, the main character doesn't know what the origin already kind of happened.
Right.
And
she's trying to rediscover
her origin story. So I will give him some uniqueness with that. Everything else was the exact same Marvel sauce. So I would say that's the only part. The character development, I don't know that they developed the main characters. So Captain Marvel, Did
you kind of feel like you knew what she was all about by the end of the movie?
See, I got mixed feelings from her performance, because at the beginning she was this absolutely not vulnerable but confused person about her past, and she reminded me too much of Tony Stark, which my whole complaint with the Iron Mans and why I stopped watching is in Iron Man 1. It was a really compelling story, really great character development, and you saw Tony Stark grow up as a person. Mm-hmm. And then in the very beginning of Iron Man 2, it was like he reverted back to his normal self, and it was like he didn't mature or grow any. That's my problem with Captain Marvel. You didn't see her grow at all. She was the same person, even after she realized that everything she had been told was a lie. Sorry, there are spoilers here. Everything that she'd been told is a lie. She didn't really change. She just was Tony Stark all over again. And her character actually acted like Tony Stark.
Yeah, I can kind of see it. She's very arrogant. Well, even at the beginning of the movie when she doesn't know who she is, really.
Which is weird for somebody that doesn't know who they are and doesn't have memories past 5 years or 6 years. Mm-hmm. To be that arrogant.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it could kind of be that it's kind of just like her ingrained personality. Even though they blocked out her memories, she's still kind of who she was before.
Which brings me up to this point. So she's a human that goes to an alien world that speaks an alien language. Mm-hmm. She has a universal translator, so I'm assuming that's how she could speak to them.
Right.
But she knows their language, like the written language. How did they... Most people that go through this sort of thing, I did a little bit of research, and where they don't really remember about them, but they'll know how to speak, they'll know how to read, and these things just like come innately to them. They don't know how to read an alien language.
Right. Yeah, I mean, she would have, weekly talks with their AI, their master AI or whatever. And maybe they implanted the knowledge that she needed in order to read the Cree language, right? I mean, that could be. And also Universal Translator, maybe it's visual as well. We have that technology today.
Yes, just not built into our eyeballs.
It's not built into our eyeballs, but,
So, this brings me to my next point. At the very beginning, she gets punched and she bleeds blue.
Yeah, that was a little weird. Yeah.
Right, because...
Oh, spoiler alerts, by the way.
Well, I mean, at the very beginning, she gets punched and she bleeds blue.
Right.
Sorry, that's 5 minutes. She got transfused 6 years prior.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, these people don't have Google that made the movie because on average, blood is replaced every 90 days. So you have all new blood every 90 days. So unless if they transfused her every 90 days, she would have red blood by 5 years. I mean, she would have red blood after 2 days. It would just... Also, the idea that their blood would carry oxygen and do the things that our blood would do seems kind of weird. I can't stand, they pay these people millions of dollars and they're all humanoid. This is an alien race form. They have AIs. They drive cars like humans and they have ears and eyes and they walk. Is that the best we could do?
Right. Oh, it goes back to our Mass Effect talk from the previous episode. It's like, on all these shows, it's not just this movie. It's like almost every sci-fi show, every alien race is a humanoid. Right?
Is some humanoid. And these happen to even have blood that can work with our bodies.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
I think actually Mass Effect did have a couple of aliens that did look totally different.
They did. A lot of the major ones looked human.
Yeah.
And then they had like a few where they got creative.
Right,
and I give them props on the androids because they were created by humans, so of course they were kind of built after us. But anyways, going on, these are all the things that build up and kind of build a disconnected story for me as you go through, because it just doesn't really make sense. And then why she would bleed red later, like a day later. So like 6 years, she still bleeds blue, and then one single day later, she bleeds red.
Maybe it's I don't know, the environment of the atmosphere of the Kree planet. Yeah, because your human blood is blue until it's encountered oxygen, right?
That is false.
It's not true. I thought it was blue. Like,
your blood carries oxygen from your lungs to your body, so it's already exposed to oxygen. 2, it's not completely devoid of oxygen. And 3, they are called red blood cells because they happen to be red.
They happen to be red.
So oxygenated
I
blood.
learned the wrong stuff in elementary school again.
Yes. Public school system.
Right.
-1. No, blood is red all the time. The reason it looks blue, and so people will point and they'll be like, well, my veins are blue. And the reason that is because you have this stuff called melanin in your skin. And that is what is looking, because people will be like, well, perfect example. So if you go and give blood, so I know that none of you are going to believe me. You go and give blood. They are going to stick a needle in your arm into this vein. That is a vein. It's not an artery, so it's not coming from the heart. It is going to the heart. It is very important that that blood never touches the air because it would be contaminated. So the blood you see in the bag as you're giving blood, so everyone go do this because it's good. You should go give blood, and it's also good because you're ignorant. That blood never touches air, and it is red. Solid red. There is no question.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay.
Blood is red.
There you have it, folks. Now you know.
Obviously, they don't. The people that made the Marvel movies.
Right.
And they didn't Google it either. My big problem is when they don't Google these things. Let's move on to story. Story, you gave it a 6. I think if we compared it to Marvel, I would agree. If we compared it to actually good theatrical things, I would disagree. The story was very weak. There was, again, spoiler alerts. I'm not going to say any more. Anything that we talk about can have spoilers. So please understand that. If you have not seen this, go watch it and then come back and watch it, because this will all make more sense.
Right.
So on a story, I don't know what story. Somebody's trying to kill the world, or...
Yeah, it seems like it's almost like it's a follow-up to previous movies and a stage for the next movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's not...
We needed to introduce this person, but we didn't want to carry the story that we're going to build forward. So we're just going to make up some problem. And the problem was weird. So first, the Skrull are trying to steal this thing that is going to help them. And it's a light speed drive, which they should have looked that up. Light speed, not really a feasible thing. They should have been doing something else. That
it's sci-fi.
Dumb. Yes, but you could do something that is plausible at least. But light speed drive. The Skrull ship made it to Earth somehow from Kree somehow. I don't know how this spaceship with no drive, and it was like in the matter of a day.
I think that's just a knock in general against that movie, in that there's a lot of sci-fi things, but they don't spend any time explaining how it works.
And they don't make sense, because the Skrull ship traveled millions of light years to get a light drive, a speed of light drive, which would actually be slower than they traveled.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's almost like it's not really science fiction because it's more like an action movie that happens to take place in space and on Earth, and it's more of an action movie than like really pure sci-fi where everything has all this detail, with explanations of how it works.
I was going to say, because they just kind of said that they needed the light speed drive, but then everything else in the movie said that they didn't need it because they managed to do it just fine without it. Mm-hmm. And everybody was warping using this honeycomb thing all over the place. So why don't you just use that?
Honeycomb drive seems to work better.
I was going to say, I believe that Android tried a honeycomb and it died. Don't try the honeycomb. So I wasn't sold on the story because I was confused as to really the main story wasn't about Captain Marvel. It was about the Skrull and their plight. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is we weren't even proven that they were being picked on. So like they were just kind of said, oh yeah, the Kree are the bad people. And we were like, okay. Yeah, let's do that then.
Right.
If I had been Captain Marvel, I would have been like, oh, I need some more proof. Like, because of course the person I could just kill now would say, I'm actually being picked on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the turning point there was Marvel happened. She is a Kree that defected basically from the Kree. And so as soon as she realized that her idol, basically her mentor, was a Kree and was a good person, at least to her, then she felt like, okay, well, if Marvel was trying to help all of the Skrull, then maybe the Skrull aren't the bad guys, right? So,
right, but there was zero proof.
Yeah.
And for me, there's
no proof either way, really. Like, she was just so lost the whole time.
And the sad part for me is the Skrull were super underdeveloped. Yeah. So as far as their whole plight goes, I don't know what their plight is, honestly. I don't know what their backstory is, why they are getting picked on. They said they didn't want to be ruled, but why didn't they want to be ruled? I don't know. There's a lot of questions. And like, maybe the Kree are right because maybe these people didn't want to be ruled because they wanted to kill everybody or something. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah.
We didn't go into it. Mm-hmm. It was not important to the story, yet there wasn't really much of a story. So, uniqueness. I give Ernesto that among Marvel, it was unique. Among movies, I feel like this type of movie where they don't remember and they've been lied to by a mentor. Right.
We've seen it before.
I was going to say, I can't think of one on the spot, but I feel like I've seen them a lot of times.
Right, yeah. I think some of the scenes in Captain Marvel could kind of look a little bit like Memento, the movie Memento, where they're kind of going back in time, but there's flashbacks and stuff like that. So some of the cinematography and editing, you've probably seen it before in other films, but it's definitely unique to Marvel.
It's 100% unique to Marvel.
Yeah,
I give you that. Yep. Special effects. If you want to see an old young person sneak, 100%. This. I have never seen somebody that looks like they're 20 hold their back while sneaking.
Right. And then running like an old man.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, we talked about in the last episode how the special effects on Nick Fury to make him look younger were pretty spot on. I don't think there's really at any point in the movie where you kind of lose the the illusion that this is a younger Nick Fury. Except for
when he decides to run.
When he decides to run down the hallway, he's just like jogging like an older guy. Or when he's picking something up from the ground, it's like really slow.
And he's like, the one scene that really stood out to me was when he was like holding his back, picking something up, and I was like, that's like an old person picking it up.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, but other than that, it was very good, very convincing special effects.
Yeah. I want to pull out my most favorite special effects. Captain Marvel breathing in space without a mask or helmet. Captain Marvel's hair blowing in the breeze in space.
Right. They had to actually make that happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, this was special effects well above and beyond.
Right.
Captain Marvel taking out an entire, I believe they were nuclear arsenal. Like these bombs destroy planets, and they were all launched at Earth. And she actually face checked them. She took them out with her face.
Sure, why not?
This brings us to our. We're moving right on past this to Superman and Batman, and this is. I'll expand more on why I don't like Superman, and I actually think that Superman versus Batman, or Batman versus Superman, Batman versus Superman,
yeah.
Was as bad as it was because of the character Superman has to be. I'll leave it at that. But Captain Marvel kind of felt like she struggled from the same thing. As soon as she was herself, she was invincible. She could breathe in space with no mask. She took out a ship that levels planets.
By just flying through it.
By just flying through it and shooting laser beams out of her hands. And then she was really inconsistent because she went to fight and was beat up a little bit. But she just blew up this whole ship. And
yeah, there was a lot of inconsistencies there. Like in the earlier fight scene, she had already unlocked all her powers, but she was still struggling on hand-to-hand combat. But then not. But then yeah, like
well, no. It was she kicked butt first, and then she got her butt kicked for a little while, and then she went and blew up the ship.
Part of that, my comment on that when we were talking about it earlier was. She's trying to like figure out how far she can go with her powers without blowing up the ship that all her friends are on right now. And because she has the potential to just explode the ship. Obviously, later she does. So if she went too far, all her friends would die in space, So I think that's part of it. It's a little bit like with Tony Stark in Iron Man 1. When he's trying to figure out how to like use the jets on his hands and on his feet without flying through the ceiling. So it's a little bit like that.
But and this is where I think all Marvels have gone. I have watched a crap ton of Marvel movies. They get into these scenes and then they're like, well, we have to end it. And so the superhero becomes invincible, flies through the ship and blows it up.
Yeah.
And it's a really bad ending. It's the ending where they're like, oh, I think we've got you. But then they step on the sword, break it, and then like it's just done. Like, and also bringing into this, you've created a hero who is invincible. She takes on a armada and chases them away. Now, what do you do with like? You have to challenge this character. You must bring something stronger than a armada, which sure should be able to level the universe because she also, outside of a ship, used the honeycomb warp. So she's pretty amazing.
Yeah. You'd almost say marvelous.
She is super marvelous, and so you should go watch the movie. Give Marvel more of your money because. They obviously need it because they're hurting on hiring really good script writers, and
it's a fun popcorn flick. Like I enjoyed watching it. It was great. It was a good pastime. Not the best. I mean, is it the best movie in the world? No. Like a lot of them.
You give it an overall of 9, just 9 out of 10. That's putting it up there on the top 10 list. I will remind you. All right, so that brings us to Batman versus Superman. Superman is this god figure who is invincible. And again, this is my problem with Captain Marvel. To have a challenge, you either have to bring something stronger than God, or you have to make God really stupid. And this happens to Superman all the time. He's like, oh, I see Lex Luthor from 100,000 miles away with a ironclad box. Probably doesn't have kryptonite in it. I'll just walk up to him instead of shooting him with my laser eyes from orbit. You're an idiot. That's all. For Superman to have the troubles he does, he has to just be an idiot.
Yeah.
I
can kind of see that. Yeah.
Or you have to bring somebody that's like stronger than him.
I think it's difficult to have a compelling storyline with like Superman, and I like some of the original, like the older Superman movies. I think were fun to watch, and they didn't struggle so much with the whole like I don't know Lex Luthor and Kryptonite deal. It was more. I don't know. It's a little bit more of a comedy almost in a way.
Right. It's just really hard to give that. And I actually feel like this was at the crux of the problem because you know what? I actually really liked the acting for the most part. Like, I would give the acting of Batman versus Superman. I think that they did a really decent job. I thought the Batman was pretty good. Another problem that they had is the complaints between Batman and Superman were really pathetic. I know where they were trying to go with that struggle because, you know, Batman's a god versus, you know...
Or Superman's
a god
right.
and humans are not. And so, you know, how do we stop them? But I also thought that their arguments against each other were kind of like 5-year-old. Like, I have children and I would expect the same arguments out of them.
Right.
And, you know, but Moira can do it better. And that's just not fair. Okay. Life's not fair.
Right.
So I guess.
So some of the arguments were like, so Batman, you know, at the beginning of the movie, they show this whole tragedy from the previous movie where Superman is fighting, I forgot who it was, the guy from the Phantom Zone. I'll remember his name later, but they're destroying buildings trying to fight each other, basically. And they're chopping buildings in half with their laser eyes, and people are dying left and right over this battle between two aliens.
General Zod,
right? So, and then Batman and the rest of humanity is just caught in the middle between this war that they didn't really like even start. It was just basically Superman and Zod. But at the same time, it is kind of humanity's war in a way, because if Superman wasn't there, then they would be fighting Zod probably very poorly.
And I understand where Batman would have prepared to ever battle a being like that.
Yeah.
But taking it out on Superman seemed kind of pathetic because Superman actually hadn't done anything bad at that point. So, like, while Batman's argument was sound, his vengeance on Superman itself seemed misplaced at best, and for being an intelligent and cool-headed person, it seemed out of place. And then Superman was just kind of dumb the entire time. Like, I don't see what Lex Luthor is doing, except I can see through everything, and I don't know why he didn't know where the kryptonite was, because again, he can see through everything. So it got really confusing.
Yeah.
Also, General Zod's ship was in Metropolis, except they found pieces of it in the Indian Ocean, which I don't know where Metropolis is, I guess, but his ship's over here. So it was it was a bad movie. It was also too long. They didn't have enough things, and there was a lot of filler time where they're walking through mist, and you're like, oh, that's cool. But
if Smallville is canon, the Smallville the show, then Metropolis is somewhere near Kansas, like 100 miles from like Kansas City or something like that. So it's more like central U.S. sort of. So yeah,
but it was across the bay, which is confusing.
Yeah, yeah. Metropolis just moves.
Okay, yeah. Superman just picks it up and moves it somewhere because he can. All right, so.
Yeah, there's that. That's story aside. Like, maybe some of you are really big fans of the comic, and I think the movie kind of follows some of it as far as like the whole like struggle between Batman and Superman. My biggest issue with the movie was that they tried to put like 3 movies into one movie. So there was Batman versus Superman, okay, and then there was also the movie where it basically the death and return of Superman, or Funeral for a Friend, like those comic books where Superman is fighting what's the guy at the end, like oh gosh, I forgot the bad guy's name, but anyway, the guy with all of the spikes and stuff. That was a separate book or a separate movie altogether, and they just mashed it at the end. Like, here's 10 minutes of Superman fighting this like ultimate being, and that should have just been a movie in and of itself. Not to mention that they also just throw in Wonder Woman, and that should have been another movie, which they did. They made a Wonder Woman movie and turned out pretty good. But it was 3 movies in one.
Wonder Woman, a fantastic character in the movie, out of place in the movie completely. I mean, the few parts where you see her, it's great, but it actually is just confusing because her story doesn't even fit in, because like she's looking for this photograph that she says is hers. I don't even know why she would care and or what she's doing there, or there's no character development on her. She's just kind of there. And we haven't seen the Wonder Woman movie came after.
Yeah.
So like why it was there, I don't know that anybody knows. It was genuinely a terrible movie though. It's right up there with all the Transformer movies.
Doomsday is the bad guy.
Doomsday.
With the spikes. There should have been a Superman versus Doomsday movie. That would have been enough for one movie.
It wouldn't have even had to have a story and would have been better. Just Superman fighting Doomsday, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Better movie.
Better movie.
Yeah. I was going to say the final battle was kind of cool where Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman are all fighting. It was actually kind of a cool battle. I was like, but I'm so done with this movie 2 hours ago that I don't care about this
so
movie.
late, and it also didn't matter. And by the time you get to the end, it's almost like the whole movie just didn't matter up until then, because they're fighting each other, and then they learn that each other's moms are called Martha.
And then they're like, oh, we'll be on teams now.
We'll be friends forever.
Right. My mom's name is Marianne. What's yours?
Providence, yeah. Or Edna.
Yeah, we were not meant to be friends.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, mortal enemies.
Sorry, yeah, now we can be because... yeah. Yeah, that was... It was generally a bad movie. We could nitpick on that for 3 hours because it was a 3-hour movie that should have been about a half-hour movie of them fighting which I don't know that the end guy had a name.
Yeah.
It was like inconsequential. It was just kind of this like created being that had no story. And
there were so many problems with it. The editing, I think, was problematic. The pacing of the movie. I typically don't get bored on superhero movies. They might have bad acting. They might have bad special effects. Maybe I'm not that interested in the story, but I'm usually engaged through it, and I'll watch it. And I'm usually like, okay, it was a movie. I enjoyed it. The pacing and the editing, and there's so much about the movie that was just not good that it just felt slow and boring through
and it's
large
3
parts
hours.
of it.
But it felt like 6.
Yeah, it was just so slow. And it's coming from somebody that I really like Lord of the Rings, which some would argue that's a really slow movie too. But I'll sit there and watch all of those movies back to back and enjoy them, even though it takes like 18 hours or something.
You disgust me for including the third one in that because that one was terrible. Watch the first 2. Read the third book. That's my recommendation on the Lord of the Rings.
But see, even you didn't like the third one, Return of the King. But would you watch it over Batman versus Superman?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would watch all the Frodo scenes. So all the Frodo and Sam scenes are garbage in the third movie. I would watch those back to back, like just those scenes before I watch Batman and Superman again.
Yeah. So Batman versus Superman.
There's this weird disconnect where he like goes to the future, but he's in a dream, but it's actually the future. Yeah, but that's not explained at all.
No, because all it is a plug for Justice League.
Right, but like it's actually it's like 10 minutes and it doesn't mean anything.
No, because it was, again, poorly edited, poorly paced, and that was simply in there to promote the next movie, Justice League.
But he didn't promote it when everybody hated it.
Right. And so as many complaints as like one might have about Marvel movies, at least there is some kind of continuation.
Okay.
There seems to be
I want to complain about Marvel right now. This was the worst thought out. I just tried to watch all the Avenger movies. And then I found out that I couldn't watch... I tried to watch the Infinity War. and I couldn't watch it because I hadn't watched Thor Ragnarok, which really, what's the raccoon movie?
Oh, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
So really, Thor Ragnarok is Guardians of the Galaxy 2.5 because it plays out. It has the same style. It's goofy. It's not really. It's really stupid. It tries to be like, oh, the one place is falling, Asgard is falling, but then it's just basically fun and games and making fun of itself. So
I see that I really enjoyed Thor Ragnarok. But I felt like it had no impact whatsoever on the Marvel universe.
But I had to watch it to understand where they were and what they were doing to watch Avengers Infinity War. So not only that, you had to watch, if you didn't watch it, you need to watch Civil War, which is also not an Avenger movie, oddly. I think that what they were is we have a Captain American budget, but we really want to make an Avenger movie. So let's do Captain America Civil War. I don't know how that happened because it was an Avengers movie.
Right, but it should have been because it was probably one of the better.
It was one of the best. It was one of my favorite Marvel movies.
I think that one and Winter Soldier are still one of my favorites.
Winter Soldier was also fantastic.
If you like action movies, Winter
Captain
Soldier,
America series is good.
Especially Winter Soldier. I put it up there with some of my favorite action
And
movies.
you know why? Captain America, they actually built a story. Mm-hmm. They actually built a character that you kind of understand and care about. Like he's gone through this thing where he kind of lost a bunch of time and he lost a loved one because of it, but he got to see, his loved one. This was, something, and his friend and the Winter Soldier and stuff that he gets
Bucky.
to fight. Yeah. This tells, and this is actually why I think that they did the best job with those, is that it actually told a gripping story and character development that you could get involved in and care about. Like you could actually care about these.
And it felt like there was something at stake.
Whereas like with Thor Ragnarok, you didn't care about any of the characters because they were just being goofballs because they weren't taking anything seriously.
Right. There was no emotional connection with the Asgardians, right? So when they started being slaughtered, it didn't really have that much of an impact.
And Thor and everything was still cracking jokes as his people were getting slaughtered. So it's like there was a huge disconnect as to what the movie wanted to be.
So apart from the whole story and the character development, I really enjoyed the movie because of the jokes. So I treat it as a comedy, and I think as a comedy, it's great. My biggest gripe with Thor Ragnarok leading into Infinity War is that, so they put all the Asgardians that were left in a big ship.
And then they blow that ship up.
And then they blow up the ship in the next movie. Yeah.
Thor is the last Asgardian left.
Now, maybe this gets all undone in the next Avengers movie.
Possibly because they like resurrecting Loki. Chronically.
There's a good chance that a bunch of these characters get resurrected in the next
because they're going to have to bring them back for Endgame so that they can kill them so that they can bring them back for a sequel.
Right.
That is the secret sauce there.
So we'll see what happens because I think this is the last Endgame is the last movie for Iron Man, I think, or at least
hopefully
for the actor that plays Iron Man.
Because then they can reboot it and make all that money again.
Yeah,
that's what they do. They will tell his intro story again with a new actor.
I hope not. They did that so many times with Spider-Man. Sony loves their Spider-Man origin story.
But then how are they going to make money off of Iron Man if they don't do that? That is what they're going to do.
They move on to other characters. Marvel has so many other characters, so many good stories that they need to just move on to. And maybe 10 years from now, I'm okay with them rebooting the whole thing. But I think it's too soon. Iron Man 1 is still a great movie to watch right now. It doesn't need to be
possibly
rebooted.
Their best.
Yeah.
Possibly their best. They destroyed Iron Man after that. And actually, I liked Iron Man in Infinity War the best. So if you took Iron Man 1 and Iron Man in Infinity War, I actually liked Iron Man series. All the other Iron Mans you could please get rid of, and I would be all that. I put him very low.
Okay. So there you have it, folks. Yeah, Batman versus Superman. Not great, at least not in our opinion. Still
not in anybody's. I think
there's some people that love it. It's surprisingly people that love Superman and Batman. like really hardcore fans seem to really.
We
like
actually know somebody that is.
Yeah.
We promised this person full amnesty, so like he would not be. They would not be. I was trying not to give up. Dang it. We would modulate their voice. He said that he could not be seen with us at all.
He
with
just
modulated voice.
Couldn't be seen with us.
So maybe next time, because he actually does really like Batman versus Superman, which I was surprised. I thought it was like Mortal Engines. Everybody just agreed that, Peter Crapson shouldn't be making movies anymore. I thought that we could all agree on that, but we seem to not be able to. So I guess another thing, this brings us to some more gaming topics. We have Apex Legends.
That's right.
I might have stated that it was a money grab. Most people don't agree with me. Guess what? They released a new character that you have to pay for.
Is there no way to get the character by playing tons of hours?
There is. So you can buy the battle pass, play a ton of hours, and get it through that.
Okay. So you have to buy the battle pass.
Yes, I also think that you can unlock the character through copious amounts of playing. But we mean copious because I'm level 25 and I actually haven't gotten enough money. So level 25 isn't a ton, but I probably have 20 hours. I'm not proud of this, but I have a ton. I have a decent amount of time.
They have to make money somehow because sure, it's a free to play game.
You shouldn't change gameplay.
Right. Yeah, that is kind of a problem. When you have the ability to get a better character, assuming that it's a better character. I haven't played this character yet.
It's more of this team composition. So if we wanted that in our team composition, we couldn't have it because we haven't paid for it.
Right. Yeah. So if it creates an imbalance in the game, then and you have the ability to buy the character outright, that is kind of a problem. But you have to think about like what other ways can they make money?
Make actual good skins, stop making the garbage.
That's true. Yeah.
So my big gripe is that you should, for a free to play game, you should never change gameplay with money.
So you should not be able to pay to win.
And maybe a character's overpowered, and I'm sure that they would patch it, or maybe they just work really well because there are characters that are better or worse. And unfortunately, the problem is you're paying to change the game and the gameplay. And I just find that you can talk about Heroes of the Storm. There's people that have tried this where you have to pay to unlock characters. None of them have done really well. Let's talk about Dota 2's card game Artifact. It was a pay to win, and because you had to pay to unlock cards. Who wanted to do that? Right. Yeah. So actually, and that wasn't even a free to play game. You had to buy the game and then buy cards in it. That was.
Well, aside from all the pay to win stuff and the poor skin choices, that are options that are available, we also find out. I think this came out last week that was it Ninja or
Ninja.
Ninja got paid $1 million to play Apex Legends. Right?
Yeah, to play it the first day that it came out. That's all he had to do, I think.
And then who was the other guy?
Shroud. I know Shroud was.
We don't know how much Shroud got paid.
I'm assuming.
But probably a lot.
North of 500,000.
At least 100,000. Probably more, right?
Yeah. He wasn't as popular as Ninja, but there was a couple people that had, they were supported to play it. And it was.
So, I guess my question is is this okay? Are we?
It's advertisement.
It is advertisement, right? Because he could spend $1 million in ads on Facebook or Google or on TV.
There are people, and I don't like the games Apex Legends, so I'm fine with that. I'm fine with hating it for some reason, but I don't think this is a good reason. People have done this for a long time. You will get endorsements through tweets from famous actors. Those are paid.
Yeah.
And now usually it's not $1 million, but if you want Kim Kardashian to tweet about how much she loves the socks that you've just made, you can pay her to do it.
Yes.
And she will. Yeah. She'll do that. So
I would argue that this is a better form of advertisement or a more effective form of advertisement than traditional ads that you click on or TV ads. Because people love watching gameplay footage on Twitch and other streaming platforms.
Also, I think that it's really good for people like Ninja because there's a stigma, like once you have so much, people stop subscribing to your channel because they're like, well, you make so much, I'll subscribe to somebody else's or whatnot. And so I really feel like people like Ninja, to continue making the copious amounts of money that they do, need to branch out from that because Ninja's subscribers have been slowly dropping. So he's going to need to start making money. His viewers haven't been dropping, but his subscriptions have. So people are going to need to branch out in ways to make their money.
Yeah, so really not a non, or at least I'd say non-issue for us. It seems like for somebody to spend, or a company to spend $1 million on one player, it's actually kind of a really cheap form of advertisement.
Oh, how many people watch Ninja and Shroud?
This is like, as far as like views per dollar, this is much cheaper than putting a spot on TV.
Also, all of those viewers play video games.
Yes.
You get a highly selective crowd. It's brilliant.
They should do more of that.
Right.
Yeah.
You put an ad on the Super Bowl and all those people watch football, but...
Do they play video games?
Who knows? Yeah, I mean, probably not.
Are they interested in shooters specifically?
Right. Yeah. So Battle Royale, you pay Shroud and Ninja. Ninja made his on a shooter or a Battle Royale. So
yeah, so pretty interesting, but yeah, it just makes sense. They should continue that model for sure. Yeah. So our next topic was Apple versus Spotify. So this has been kind of a recent thing. It's been actually going on for a while, but Spotify has put up a website recently basically asking Apple to play fair. So what's been going on is that let's go back. Spotify has had their service on iOS for quite some time, I think since 2012 or so. And they haven't been able to easily charge for their subscription service through Apple because Apple, for digital goods, Apple asks for 30% of any transaction.
They don't ask, they demand.
They demand it, right?
Apple doesn't ask anything.
Well, if you're going to offer in-app purchases, it has to be 30% through Apple. They do allow you to have the subscription outside of Apple. So you can go to Spotify.com, sign up, and then go back to your iOS device, log in with your Spotify info, and now you have Spotify on your phone. But it's harder for people that discover Spotify through the App Store to be able to actually subscribe. So what Spotify is asking for is for Apple to play fair because Apple now has their own music service. They have Apple Music. They charge $9.99 a month, just like Spotify does. But Apple doesn't have to pay 30% to themselves. So Spotify is basically at a disadvantage here.
I have a word for Spotify. Suck it up. You're playing with the big boys. I mean, they want to play fair. If you really want to play fair, make your own OS that people want to use on their phones and charge Apple to have their ones on it.
A good friend of mine also had the same comments. Like, they should just make their own OS and then you can promote your OS and not pay 30% on your own OS.
Right.
But that's not realistic, right? But still.
I don't think that Apple should be doing this. This would be where I would go. I think it's stupid of Apple. Yeah. It's the same reason that it's stupid of Amazon to go and invest in a truck company.
Right.
Because guess what? AWS is losing tons of car manufacturers that are going to Azure.
Right. I think Ford and a couple of other car manufacturers are pulling out of AWS or considering Azure or Google Cloud Engine because they might be competing with Amazon in the future.
Right. And they don't want to do that. And they don't want to be giving Amazon
they don't want
their
to
competition.
Fund Amazon to compete with
that would
them.
be like Ford paying GM to host their servers. Like, that's ridiculous. insane.
It only works if Ford owns some stake in GM or something like that, right?
I think that it's stupid on Apple's part because this is what they're doing. They are now competing with their customers. So they've done this before. They compete with their App Store people, or they buy them. Buying, I think, is fine, but they compete with them. And they will chase more and more people off. Like maybe Spotify doesn't support Apple anymore, and maybe people don't want to use Apple because people don't like supporting them.
Yeah.
Also, if you're a jerk, people tend to not like you as much. Now, I don't think this is going to happen to Apple over Spotify. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But if they continue to do this, if they continue to take this, we don't care if we're competitors, I think it will only hurt them.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to the whole, like, I think this is similar to the net neutrality debate, whether whether there should be equal access to the internet from both like service providers like Netflix and Hulu and the consumer itself. Should they be paying more to access these specific services because these telecom companies own the lines and thus they control the flow of information? Apple owns this platform, which is iOS with the App Store. And basically I'm asking is this the same as telecoms and net neutrality and Apple basically having a big chunk of the ecosystem of smartphones? I'm not sure where they're
20%?
at. 20% probably is what I would put.
And I'm just guessing. I will look that up really quickly. So
what I've always argued with net neutrality is that I believe that the internet is a service or I'm trying to remember the exact wording, but it's similar. It's a utility like water or electricity. It's something that people need nowadays in order to look up information, to look up jobs, to apply for jobs. It's a basic necessity almost. But Apple is not in the same category, I don't think.
See,
like you don't need an Apple device to apply for a job or to look up vital information. You can do that on other platforms as well. With the internet, there's certain areas in the world where you only have one internet provider. And I believe it's important for the internet provider to play nice and play fair.
Do you want to know where one of those is?
Where?
Seattle, Washington. Because of corruption at their government level, somebody made a lot of money in their government to make it illegal for all other internet providers. Yeah. So there is only one.
So those people have no choice. They have to.
They should fire their government. Yeah. That's the choice that they should make.
But I think everybody that wants to have a smartphone, they have plenty of choices nowadays.
They do.
Yeah.
And so this is where I would go: is the competition should drive that. You don't like that? You don't like Apple's things?
Yeah, you don't like Apple taking 30% of everything? Then don't use Apple.
This
use something else.
Is what a free market should do. Yeah. So unfortunately, places like Seattle, Washington don't have a free market. Mm-hmm. People cannot come in. Everybody complains and hates Comcast. No other internet provider can come in there. It is illegal to. Why?
Because of lobbying. I mean, it's
absolutely.
I mean, it's just government corruption and lobbying.
Absolutely.
That's how everything gets done.
And their government says that they do it so that they can bring them lower prices. They pay more than I do. And there are 4 people that provide me internet. Now, Igloo technically only provides me internet through AT&T, but...
Sure, they're just reselling internet.
Sure, whatever. But I have 4.
Yeah, here we have around 4.
Yeah, I was going to say AT&T, Spectrum, Igloo, and there was one other.
Bluegrass, I think, something.
Bluegrass.
Yeah.
And we did have Google
We
Fiber.
had Google Fiber for a little
We could do a whole episode on how Google doesn't know how to use Google to search information. Like, how far do you need to bury something to keep it from freezing and coming up?
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't search that or understand that it freezes here, because I know in California it doesn't freeze very often. Mm-hmm. It does here.
Yeah, it was a really sad thing because I was really looking forward to fast fiber internet.
Actually, though, when they announced that they were here, Spectrum like doubled their internet speed. So
yeah, they had a short-term effect, but I think they're just going to go right back to horrible service and expensive, slow internet.
I don't know, because AT&T also upped their game here because AT&T laid fiber. So I don't know that Spectrum can really go back because it forced all the other ones to compete then.
Possibly, yeah. I actually know at least one person at work that's switching over to AT&T because it's cheaper and faster. So maybe
I am one block away from AT&T fiber. I am so angry that I missed it by one block.
Yeah, and what bothers me is that you can't barter with these companies. You can't say, you know what, I'll pay you $1,000 to finish running that line. I will gladly pay you to do that last mile, but they won't. They don't want you. They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
They have your money either way. They're going to charge you the same amount whether you have fiber or not. They just don't care. The only thing that was forcing their hand was Google being in town.
I have Spectrum, so maybe if we went to them and be like, I'd pay and I would switch, maybe. But I really actually hate AT&T.
I've played that game a couple times where I've threatened to quit just to get better deals, but it gets really annoying really quickly having to do that every year. And I tried to actually switch. There was a door-to-door salesman for AT&T that I spoke with, and they promised me that they could get me 48 megabits here. And I went so far as switching to AT&T. The guy was here installing it. I did a speed test, and I was getting 16. And I was like, oh, but I'd asked for 48. And he was like, oh, you can't get 48 here. That ends like down the street from you. I'm like, oh, okay, so you guys lied to me. That same day, like a few minutes later, I switched back to Spectrum because I wasn't going to pay more money for slow internet.
Yeah, no, AT&T is a terrible company. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sponsoring them. I mean, unless they want to pay me copious money. And then
if they pay you $1 million,
yeah, I was going to say, pay me $1 million.
You'll wear an AT&T shirt, hat, you know.
Absolutely. I'm sellable.
Yeah.
No, I'm not actually. I will sell myself, but nobody will buy. Do we have a tally on our tally counters?
Well, I'm sure I've missed a few, but Nesto has 27 and Merrick has 25.
Yes! All right. So
that's still much higher than we wanted.
Yeah, sadly.
I think we both lose
25. Altogether, a little over 50.
Right.
So our goal will be next week to improve on that until we are at average of 0.
So to average 0, we'd have to have negative ums. Can we do that? Can we have negative
Can
ums?
If we use like, is that a negative um? Because maybe I'm even then. Because I use like rampantly as well.
We'll have to figure, Well, let us know how we're going to get some negative ums. Maybe we should start like. My
like umming is also a thing where I'm like toothbrush.
So there you have it, folks. We say a lot, as you can see on the screen. Be sure to follow our Facebook page. That's on Facebook. To search for The Caviling.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Caviling, and follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter.
The Caviling.
Absolutely. And then we also have our website, TheCaviling.com, where you can download our podcasts.
Yep.
And is now on which platforms? We just set those up.
Everyone but iTunes, because I hate iTunes at this point. So most places, it makes it very easy to make available. Mm-hmm. I run Linux and Windows, and there is no way for me to subscribe and make an iTunes account without downloading iTunes. I don't use iTunes. I don't want iTunes. So I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
Shortly this week, you will have an iTunes. I will have to download it just to make an account because I can't make one on the web because it's Apple.
Right. But if you are on Apple, if you're using an iOS device, you can still
download Spotify.
You can do that, or you can actually the Podbean app. You can just download our podcast directly from Podbean, which is where it's supposed
directly from Podbean or from Spotify. It's where
iHeartRadio is on there too, so you don't have to wait for the Apple version to download it.
In fact, boycott Apple. I prefer to call them Crapple. So that would make me happy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.